What up? Say what's up as you come in, chat. Oh, my bad about yesterday, y'all. My bad. It was my wedding anniversary yesterday. So even though I said that I will be back on Monday, I wasn't on Monday. Sunday's usually not a streaming day for me. And then I wasn't on Monday because it was my wedding anniversary. So I don't really have much to say to that. It had to be with wifey. Um, Nothing there for you guys, man. I had no excuses, and I wouldn't make one up. You know, it was my wedding anniversary. But with that being said, like the consistency continues. So here we are, Tuesday, March 4th. March 4th. I'm like, dude, this year is literally flying. 3 months already? Like, man, I'm telling you. It's like as you get older, time flies by so much quicker. I can remember when a year felt like forever. It's been a while, but I remember when it used to. But with that being said, guys, I'm back. Again, my apologies for not being here yesterday on a Monday. March 3rd is my wedding anniversary. I had to spend that with my wife, who's my family. It was well deserved. I had a lot of fun, much needed, and now I'm back. So with that being said, only have a wedding anniversary once a year, right? So that's the only time I'll be going for my wedding anniversary. But other than that, you know, we're gonna keep it going. So March 4th, today's Tuesday. Today's Tuesday, and we're gonna cover a couple of things because I want to live stream twice today. President Trump is actually gonna be on around 9 p.m. and he's going to be doing. I think he's addressing Congress. And it's a congressional. It's not a congressional speech exactly, but I believe he's doing a joint address to Congress. So I wanted to live stream that here from my channel. So I'm just gonna jump in. We're gonna react to some news. All of it is pretty recent news, except one because I was talking last week and on Saturday, Friday and Saturday, I talked about Mr. John Fetterman, Senator Fetterman from PA to be exact. And I did do more research on him, still doing some and going to continue. But so far, still in the same boat. I still like the things I'm seeing and hearing and learning about him. So we're going to watch him have a conversation on The View about a month ago. And I believe that's right after Senator Fetterman's stroke. And he's kind of talking about health at some point, and also why he feels like he would be a horrible Republican, which I thought was great. But John Fetterman is looking good for PA. I'm not gonna lie, I like him. I actually like him better than Josh Shapiro. But let's just see. Like we're gonna tune into him and see what he's talking about on The View, and then he's gonna be first up on the menu. After that, sticking with the Democrats. The Democrats, we're gonna go over to Matt Moore's TV. I love Matt Moore's. He covers. Usually, I would say conservative-leaning commentary very well. Matt Moores is the man. He has 405,000 subscribers. So when you guys leave here, go check his channel out. He covers things beautifully. We got 2 clips by Matt today. Democrats caught in massive protester scandal. So apparently, the Democrats have been paying people to protest against MAGA. This is literally blowing my mind because I don't think the Democrats realize that we all have the same president. But we're going to figure it out. We're going to help the Democrats out tonight a little bit. And then the second clip by Matt is Joe Rogan torched Gavin Newsom's new cringe podcast. So apparently, Gavin Newsom, I'm like, dude, out of all Democrats though, Gavin Newsom's coming out with a podcast, right? So if you don't know who Gavin Newsom is the governor, right, of California. Not very well liked nowadays, right? But yeah, especially due to the wildfires, not a lot of people's friend, not very favorable in California right now. A lot of people are calling for him to step down. Nonetheless, the Democrats have realized that when President Trump and JD Vance went on Joe Rogan's podcast, it did a tremendous thing for the campaign. It did a great thing for the Republican campaign. And the Democrats have finally woken up and realized, hey, you know what? None of us are really going on a long-standing podcast or even talking in long-standing format. As a matter of fact, the people are annoyed because we keep coming with our predisposed questions that we refuse to move away from. So how about one of us starts a podcast and they chose it to be Gavin Newsom. So hey, what's up guys in the chat? Say what's up. How you guys doing? Tell me where you watching from. Hey guys, I appreciate y'all tuning in when I jump in here on that night. I'll be looking for mods soon. Probably within the next week. I need some moderators on the channel. So the more you guys jump in, the more I know where the most people are loyal at, the people who watch the most, and then I can be like, yo, you trying to be a mod for the channel? All right, and then we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to jump over to the Republican side, where today, earlier in the day today, the tariffs for Canada actually came out. And because these tariffs were released, in return, Justin Trudeau released retaliatory tariffs against the United States. So, okay, Canada's not happy about this. The comment section was wild. Everybody's like, you know, as a U.S., I'm on Canada's side. As a U.S., we're on Canada's side. And then I love the mixed emotion because towards the end of the comments, you have a lot of Canadians. So towards the end would be some of the very beginning comments. You have a lot of Canadians saying like, man, like I appreciate everything like President Trudeau is doing, especially with all the support that they're loaning to Ukraine right now. But I hope Canada just remembers to look out for its people first. Canadians need to keep Canadians in mind first. And I was like, sounds pretty familiar. Sounds like what we've been dealing with in the U.S. And that's the reason why a lot of people aren't feeling bad, especially people who voted for President Trump. They're not feeling bad about the things that he's doing. Why? Because he's doing what he was voted to do when he got put in office. So, with that being said, welcome to Cozy Corner TV, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Karen Smith. Call me Q, and we are on the corner. We're on the corner. So we're going to jump into some of these reactions. Like I said, I'm going to do 2 live streams. President Trump is supposed to be speaking tonight at 9 p.m. Let me actually look this up, what he's actually doing, so I don't call it the wrong thing. Let me see. What are we talking about? Trump will address a joint session of Congress tonight. Okay, so he's addressing a joint session of Congress. Trump speech live updates. Latest on President Trump address tonight. Okay, how to watch Trump's speech for his 2025 joint address. Okay, cool. CBS News will carry the president's address as the Democratic response. Okay, so we got CBS covering it. I think NBC is covering it. Trump to address Congress in amid backlash. Trump to address Congress as trade war erupts. Yeah, so we're going to touch a little bit on the trade war. Not so much, but a little bit because of just some things Justin Trudeau had to say about the tariffs that actually went into play today, which in return Canada released retaliatory tariffs against the United States. So first up on the menu, Senator John Fetterman. Senator John Fetterman is from Pennsylvania. I believe he was the joint attorney general or the attorney general. Let's see. No, I did not say party Google. I said PA, like Pennsylvania. Previous offices: Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania, Mayor of Braddock. Okay, so he was the Lieutenant Governor of PA from 2019 to 2023, and he was the Mayor of Braddock for 2006 to 2019, and he is now the senator. The things that I have been looking up about Senator Fetterman, I like so far. It's interesting because he seems to have gotten a lot of backlash after he went to Mar-a-Lago to visit President Trump. I don't know why he went, but I'm assuming that it was just a general meet and greet. Perhaps as a senator, he probably expressed some of his own personal morals and beliefs and felt like that they aligned a lot with some of the things President Trump stood for. So John Fetterman went down to Mar-a-Lago to visit President Trump, and he got a ton of backlash when he got back. Some PA residents hit the streets to protest, and they went crazy. Yo, guys, when you're in the chat, say what's up. Hit that like button for me. Say what's up in the chat, guys. So yeah, they went kind of crazy. You know what I'm saying? That he went to Mar-a-Lago and visited President Trump. A lot of people were saying he was a traitor. Oh, he's a Democrat that's trying to go over to the Republican side. Let's see who we got here. Mariah, what you said to me? I can't believe say hi, Mariah. Hey, what's up, Mariah? I love your channel. You guys say what's up in the chat. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button for me, guys. It takes the channel far. You know how YouTube is. They always coming after the good channels with the likes and the copyright claims. They be coming after me. So hit that like button if you can for me. It only takes 1 second. So anyway, let me focus. John Fetterman, Senator John Fetterman from Pennsylvania. He went to Mar-a-Lago after Trump won to visit Trump. They had a conversation. PA residents went crazy. Oh, this is a Democrat who's trying to leave the Democratic Party to go be a Republican. Like, they just lost their mind, right? So, nonetheless, that's not why John Fetterman went down there. He went down there, I believe, to speak with President Trump because I think that some of his morals, ethics, some of the things that he believes in wholeheartedly, like they mean something to him. He feels like President Trump aligns with some of that. Now, where John Fetterman can be confusing, and I low-key love this about him, is that you also will see him in Pennsylvania, probably during Pride Month, wearing a gay flag in the streets, like shaking the hand of like a gay man or woman or a drag queen, right? So I love this because this is how people's minds blow up, because it's kind of like, well, how could this dude be in the street shaking the hand of a gay person, but then he aligns with some of the things that Trump is doing? It can happen. And this is why I think like this guy's only been a senator for 2 years. So really, he wouldn't have really been too much on my radar if Bill Maher didn't say anything about him, because I tend to kind of watch Bill Maher here and there pretty often. I keep an eye on him. I like some of his shows. So it's like when I heard him say that he could be the next presidential candidate for the Democrats, I was curious, right? Because we know historically, Bill would usually lean left, right? A lot more liberal. Huge supporter of people like Gavin, Barack Obama. Okay, whatever. We know Bill Maher is like that. But he said this guy was a little bit different because he was pushing back on a lot of rhetoric that the Democratic Party puts in the forefront of their party. Hey, we stand for this, right? So he was talking about John Fetterman and basically saying this guy's not afraid to say boys can't be girls, right? Or like men shouldn't, biological men anyway, shouldn't play in women's sports. So it sparked my curiosity. So I'm like, okay, John Fetterman, let me go look into this guy a little bit more. And at first I liked what I saw, but the more I looked into him, I gotta tell you guys, I like this dude a lot. First of all, he wears no real clothes anywhere. Like he wears sweat shorts and like a hoodie everywhere he goes. Like he was on The View, and like literally when you guys see this clip, he's gonna come out and he has on shorts and a hoodie, and I'm like, dude, this guy's on national television and he has on like sweatshorts and a hoodie, and like I love it. He's done it when he's went to galas with his wife, when he's went to restaurants. Okay, so if you're wondering why do I love something like that about a person, because it shows that he's not concerned about what people think about him, right? And as long as we're dealing with a politician that is uber concerned or consumed with what people think about him, then we kind of fall victim to having a politician that's going to eventually screw us over, right? Because they want to get along with everybody. They want to not piss too many people off, not step on too many toes. John Fetterman, I'm like, this guy's a W candidate. Like, I'm telling you, I like him better than Josh Shapiro, and I don't say that lightly. So far, what I see, he's a good candidate. So we're going to play John Fetterman. He's on The View. Again, he's a Pennsylvania senator. He's been in the Senate about 2 years, but I think he would be an excellent pick for the Democratic Party to get back on top. So let's take a look at his conversation on The View.
Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman was the first Democratic senator to visit Mar-a-Lago, and he says he's committed to working alongside Republicans, but can he find a middle ground with an administration that has spent the first week in power destroying Democratic Party policies, and let's say he's a little shaky with democracy. Okay? So please welcome to our table, finally, in reality, Senator John Fetterman.
Look at this. I'm sorry, but I love people who are unapologetically themselves. I'm like, this dude comes out with literally gray sweatshorts and a hoodie and like some Reeboks or something. Like, he doesn't care that he's on national television. Like, I just have a lot of respect for him.
You to repurpose your inauguration outfit.
Or something like that to the inauguration.
There's no dress code here. It's hard to believe it's only been a week since the former president has retaken office. You were there at inauguration. He's been attempting to flex his power. But are you surprised by anything? I didn't even see what that was.
He's wearing a similar outfit at the inauguration. You looked great.
I totally feel you. Okay, I get you. So, but are you surprised at anything you've been seeing, or do you anticipate that there's going to be changes that we should be prepped for that we're not thinking about?
I mean, honestly, I haven't been surprised by anything now. I mean, he's been doing essentially what he actually campaigned on that. Mm-hmm. He announced he is going to pardon the J6 individuals. He is going to absolutely go after the border. So there's a lot of things that he's already ran on. I mean, criticize a lot of it, and I don't agree with everything either, but it's undeniable that he actually ran on that and been really upfront. He's like, I am your reputation, and he's, kind of making those moves. So that's kind of where we're at. Early on, immediately after the election, I was like, hey, we have a choice. We can freak out and follow every other thing around, like a cat, with a laser, after everyone. But I'm not that guy. I'm not going to be that Democrat. For me, there's things I'm going to agree with, I'm going to disagree with, but I'm in the business of finding wins for Pennsylvania and for the nation, and engaging the president. I think I see that as doing my job.
Now, this is interesting, right? So before I finish going, I don't think Whoopi was prepared for that answer, because the way she asked the question, we know the view, right? We know how Whoopi works. She asked the question in a sense where it was kind of like she said, is there anything we should prepare for? It's only been this long, I can't believe it. And I think she thinks John is going to say something to the effect of, man, President Trump really came out the gate swinging. But he didn't say any of that. He said, no, I'm actually not shocked by anything. The president actually is doing what he ran on. Whatever he said he was going to do, he's actually doing it. So I don't think they were prepared for his answer. But as we keep watching, you guys will see why I think he's a good presidential candidate coming out of Pennsylvania.
And I wanted to ask you, you went down to Mar-a-Lago and met with the president, and he actually was singing your praises after. He said you were fascinating, impressive, a common sense person. I agree with him on that. Not a liberal or a conservative. I'm curious what your takeaway was from meeting with him, and what, if you found that there's any specific policy areas you think you can work with him on.
Yeah, well, I think overall it was a positive experience. I mean, he was kind, he was cordial. It wasn't in any kind of theater. It wasn't trying to get your picture taken to kind of put something out on social media. It was just really a conversation. I actually spoke for over an hour. And overall, my wife was there, and she might be watching right now at home. Hi, Giselle, if you're home. And she was there as well, too, and we just had a conversation. And one of the things, can we agree on? Well, one of the things that was easy, like the Dreamers, the Dreamers immigration, that. And Giselle was part of that community, and we both had the opportunity to express that. I would also, I'm on the Ag Committee, and I think protecting the SNAP as well, too. Food insecurity is really important issue. And some people on that side wants to go after that or weaponize that. So for me, those are kind of issues. Other things that we can agree on as well. But overall, it was just a straight up conversation, and I just have a rule. I'm going to engage and have a conversation. That's anyone playing it straight, and that's doing my job again.
You did get a lot of criticism for it from some people who thought you going to Mar-a-Lago gives cover to Trump by creating the solution that he's amenable to working with Democrats. I was very supportive of when people like Mitt Romney and Rob Portman worked with Joe Biden, so I understand the need for bipartisanship. I didn't love the optics of you going to Mar-a-Lago. He was going to, which is his palace. He was going to be in Washington a week later. But what was your goal, and do you feel ultimately you were successful?
Well, here's what happened. I was being lazy on the couch at Friday night, and my team reached out saying, hey, and I don't know if this is a trolling or a hoax, but they extended an invitation. What do you think? And my Well, I mean, if they're playing it straight, then I think it's pretty reasonable to have a conversation. Inviting me to engage, and I visited it. So maybe some people would be critical of that, but for me, engaging the president, I think when you're in this business, I mean that's part of the job. Any more you would criticize Governor Newsom, that received the president there after the fires in California. They are going to find a way to work together. I mean, that's where we are. And I hope maybe you are watching are tired of just like the venom and the hate. And it's like, I'd like more bipartisan kinds of things. And you are going to agree with things and you're going to disagree on things. And I'm going to pick my fights. And I'm not going to, I've chosen not to add to the cheap heat online or go after those kinds of things. I've never found that helpful. And if those kinds of things were helpful, we would be in a different situation. We'd be the ones making those kinds of decisions with the new administration with then Vice President Harris.
Yeah. Well, Senator, Trump's pardoning of roughly 1,500 January 6th rioters on his first day back in office is still reverberating. And when we last spoke with you in December, you were critical of Joe Biden having just pardoned his son, Hunter. So although President Trump ran on doing this, there was a discrepancy, and a lot of people in his inner circle said he wouldn't do it for violent offenders. So there was some surprise in what he ended up doing.
Of course not. I'm on record criticizing going after Hunter Biden. And I also agreed that the trial in this city, in New York, was politically motivated, that wouldn't otherwise have been prosecuted if it was someone else. And I've been very front and center in pardons. I chaired that process in Pennsylvania. I was all about delivering second chances, and I was very proud of that. And I think that's really the cornerstone of criminal justice reform is if you are following the rules and you've paid your debt, I do believe you do. I do believe there needs to be a path for redemption. And this process, whether Joe Biden or whether President Trump, I don't agree with many of those pardons, especially on the J6 ones. And I've called that out. I've been on record saying that that's just not true. And if you're going to abuse the process, somebody that's been very committed as part of that, has made that part of my career. I think it's sad because it's been politicized. And I think, if anything, that might have set some things back because people assume now, depending on what team's in office, those are the people that get some redemption.
Yeah, this is where I would say that if I saw anything work against Joe Fetterman going to Mar-a-Lago, it was that. Like Bill Maher made a slight joke where he was like, when John Fetterman ended up in Mar-a-Lago, they thought he was one of the January 6th rioters. And he was being facetious. I know he was just trying to be funny. But it's like, those are the type of things that I've seen kind of not work in his favor. Like you just saw Anna on The View say, like, I didn't like your optics and I didn't like you going to Mar-a-Lago, but do you feel like you accomplished your mission? And he says it out front. He's like, I didn't really have much of a mission. I was just invited. Right? So he's not trying to play a side. He just said, like, I'm going to pick and choose my battles. We can all go crazy because President Trump won, and we can be like a cat chasing a laser, or we can sit down and we can have hard conversations. This is why I say that I think he's a great candidate. Now, I by no means think that this man right here is going to take the 2028 election. I actually don't believe that. Unless I see some, spectacular things happen from now and maybe the next 2.5 years, because that's usually when primaries take place, like around midterm. I don't see it happening because I know he's going to fly under the radar. Like, he's only been a senator about 2 years. He's not, like, he's known, but a lot of people don't know him. Bill Maher says he's very famous amongst his colleagues, but that can be very subjective depending on who you are, right? So I don't necessarily see him taking the 2028 election. I know he's going to fly under the radar. But when I saw the last panel that they put out there, and I'm seeing like AOC, Gavin Newsom on there, Stephen A. Smith, which, hey, if Stephen wins, then we know the Democratic Party, they're in some real trouble, right? Pete Buttigieg, like, I don't think any of those people were necessarily horrible, but if you're worried about someone who would be considered a far leftist becoming president, I think that's where those guys kind of fit as far as the American people are concerned. John Fetterman doesn't fall in that gap at all. Like, he's already said things that I don't agree with, and he's already said things that I do agree with, and it's only about an 8-minute video. This is why I say he would be good for the Democrats. It's not like I'm trying to like, oh, I hope the Democrats take the election. No, I'm just tired of seeing them put up sorry candidates. Like, it's really hard to see them put up some of the most horrible candidates that they've been putting up. And then when they actually win, they terrorize and wreck the country. So I just want to see them put up a good candidate, a candidate that literally can make Republicans think like, is this guy really a Democrat? And that's where I feel like John Fetterman fits in.
I just for clarification, did you mean that the 34 count case in which Donald Trump was found guilty of various financial crimes was politically motivated here in New York?
I found that when the judicial system gets weaponized and targeted political enemies for political gain, I think that's inappropriate, and I think that degrades our collective trust in this a very important institution, whether that's on a Democratic going after a Republican or a Republican going after a Democratic one. And I like to think I call it strikes and balls, because the system has to remain impartial. I mean, that's really the cornerstone of our society.
Would that be the way that things worked? Wouldn't that be great if that's the way that things actually work?
That's crazy. Sonny didn't have nothing to say after he said that. Like, she just got quiet and she kind of made a face. Because we know Sonny can be very divisive. And I think, like, she asked that question, like, are you saying this? And he kind of clarifies himself. And he goes, look, bottom line is that we have to have a system that is impartial. I think she was thinking that he was leaning one way. And he's like, no, I'm actually not interested in leaning one way. I'm more interested in if we have a system that's impartial. This is why I like this guy. Trust me when I tell you, chat, mark my words, keep your eye on John Fetterman. Like, 2028 elections are going to come up. Yes, President Trump hasn't even been in office 60 days yet, but I'm telling you, time flies. And before we know it, primaries will be around the corner, meaning like someone in the midterm of President Trump term, someone will be looking to be the next president, right? Like, as far as we know, right, as far as the law is concerned, he can't serve a third term. So this is it for President Trump. So someone's up next, right? We don't know if it's going to be JD. A lot of people want to see JD up next. The funny thing about that is that historically, usually when vice presidents run directly after their president, they usually don't win. It's only happened, I think, 2 or 3 times in American history where it's happening. You can fact check me on that. And I was shocked myself. I was like, what? Like, especially if the president was great, right? We would think that the vice president will follow up. But usually, it for some reason, it just doesn't happen like that. So I'm interested to see what that looks like. If JD did take the ticket in 2028, like, who would his VP be, right? Like, we know Vivek is running for governor, which I'm like Ohio, have some sense in your mind. Vote for Vivek. I'm hoping that Ohio is like paying attention, because Ohio is like in dire needs of a lot of things. So I'm really hoping that they put it just seems like, and I'm not saying this is true, it just seems like when Democrats are usually in control of a state, it's not always doing the best, right? I can't say that for every single state, right? I love the great state of Pennsylvania, but I'm like, dude, there's certain parts of Philly that if you go down to, it's cruddy. It's hard to be down there. It's hard to see. All right, guys. So switching gears a little bit, because we know that the president will be on around 9 speaking, and I want to live stream that from here as well. We're going to jump over still with the Democrats, but Matt Morse, shout out to you, my guy, Matt Morse TV. He says, Democrats caught in massive protest scandal. Okay. It's not the first time we've heard about something like this. I'm hoping this isn't true, because the Democrats, I'm hoping that they're not paying protesters to protest MAGA or protest President Trump, right? Because MAGA is just what President Trump said. It's a move. Make America great again. There's nothing to stop, right? But apparently the Democrats have been paying protesters to go to the White House, downtown in New York, these various places, and protest against the Republican Party, the current administration. So we're going to jump right into Matt and see what he has to say about this. Yo, you guys in the chat, say what's up. Hit that like button for me, guys. It only takes 1 minute. Say what's up. Tell me where you're watching from.
Ladies and gentlemen, right now, Democratic House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is in complete and total damage control mode. You see, just the other day, some pretty serious allegations have surfaced that Hakeem Jeffries has been paying people to protest against the Trump administration. And apparently, these allegations have rattled Hakeem Jeffries so much that he actually felt the need to upload a video response where he doesn't just deny the allegations, but he also makes some absolutely laughable claims about how America stands with the Democrats right now. Now,
okay, so Hakeem Jeffries, basically he hears about this rumor that the Democrats are being accused of hiring protesters to protest against the current administration. So in response, he makes a video. I gotta be honest with you, his video was very cringy to me.
Before we get into breaking all of this down, let me ask you guys a question. Have any of you noticed something a little bit weird about these left-wing protests lately? They're looking a little bit empty, aren't they?
Yep.
Well, that's because, as we now know, USAID, the taxpayer-funded slush fund that has been funneled into left-wing activist groups, has now been shut down. And hey, what do you know? The second that USAID cash flow dried up, so did the protests.
Yep.
But you know what? Okay, let's take a listen to what none other than Hakeem Jeffries has to say about all of this.
Just got back to the Capitol, another day, another lie from these people who are out of control. I'm told that Donald Trump, Mike Johnson, and extreme MAGA Republicans are claiming that Democrats are sending paid protesters into their town hall meetings. What's wrong with y'all? What's wrong with y'all? You don't need to send paid protesters into your town hall meetings. The American people are with us all across the country. People are rising up to push back against the assault on the economy, the assault on hard-working families, the assault on our democracy, and the assault on Medicaid. We don't need paid protesters, bro. The American people are with us.
This is hilarious to me. My guy said, we don't need paid protesters, bro. Yo, Hakeem Jeffries, he drives me nuts. First of all, this video is so untactful. Like I hate when he does off the cuff videos like this, because I don't think he does great in interviews anyway. This is interesting, right? Because this is what he says. What's wrong with y'all? The American people are with us. And I want to ask Hakeem Jeffries, what's wrong with you? Where do you see the American people with you? Like, this is where I'm like so worried about the Democratic Party. Yo, you guys in the chat, say what's up. Tell me where you watching from. Hit that like button for me. But it's like, it drives me crazy because I'm just like, dude, it's not true. Like, President Trump's approval rating is up. It's not true. So regardless of what the Democrats are saying, listen, I get it. They're not happy that he won. They don't like that he won. I have a lot of friends and people that are not happy that he won. And you can't change it. Like, he's still your president. So either you're going to literally sit here and be walking around for the next 4 years complaining about President Trump, which is ridiculous. That's literally like being on a football team and for 4 years, because you don't like your coach or your quarterback, for the whole 4 years, you're like, I hope we lose. I hope we lose. I hope we don't win the championship. I'm like, what is wrong with y'all? Like, wake up, Democrats. Like, wake up. You guys shouldn't be paying protesters to go anywhere because they would be protesting against their own president. This is why the Democrats worry me. And this is why I said, regardless of who they put up in 2028, it better not be him. It better not be Hakeem Jeffries. It better not be him.
All right, folks, now that we've heard from Hakeem, let's break this down piece by piece. First off, as we mentioned earlier, these allegations about Democrats paying people to protest against Trump aren't just coming out of thin air. In fact, in the middle of February, a report confirmed...
I'll read these for you guys. It says left-wing groups funded anti-Doge protests at Republican town halls. Wow, left-wing groups funded them. Anti-protest at Republican town halls report. George Soros funded organizations and other Democrat activists led the protests in GOP districts, which media presented as organic backlash.
Confirmed that George Soros and USAID funded activist groups were literally paying people to show up outside of Trump's events. So now we know for a fact that when Hakeem Jeffries says that these protests are organic and represent the will of the people, that's all just completely false. In reality, all of these left-wing protests were being funded by taxpayer dollars, and now that the USAID slush fund has been gutted, all of that so-called public support seems to have vanished. But hey, let's go even further, because as you remember, Hakeem Jeffries in that video said that America stands with the Democrats. Well, let's check the receipts. According to a recent CNN report, yes,
View of the Democratic Party, favorable 31%, unfavorable 57%. State of the Union, new poll, unfavorable view of Democrats, highest since 2008. Okay, and guess what? That number actually increased because it was at 21%. I don't know how the Democrats dropped that low, but what did Lil Wayne say? Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. That's crazy. Like, for the Democrat to be 31% is wild for the Democratic Party, if you understand anything about American history, right? So this is crazy. Now, we've already had Trump compared to one of the most overzealous presidents the United States has ever seen, which is Andrew Jackson, right? We've had Joe Biden compared to one of the worst presidents of the United States has ever seen, which is Buchanan, right? And they attribute that to him because he pretty much allowed the Civil War to start, right? Andrew Jackson was so overzealous that he would constantly pass laws, legislation, and he started to get in trouble with the Supreme Court, right? So in all of that crazy stuff that we see happening within our government right now, the Democratic Party is still all the way at 31% unfavorable. That is a wild number. And this is how you know it's not Donald Trump and his mean MAGA friends doing something to the Democratic Party. No one's drinking MAGA Kool-Aid, dude. It's just that the Democrats, y'all won't admit that Joe Biden really effed up the country. Like, he messed some stuff up. And it sucks. I get it, because Joe Biden, like, you know, to his defense, a lot of people who don't follow government or politics, they don't understand why Joe Biden would have such a fan base, right? Or such a group of people that love him so much. But the man was in politics well over 30 years. Well over 30 years. I actually have went to church with people who lived near Joe Biden and watched his sons grow up. So he has people, and yes, and I live very close to the state of Pennsylvania, the state of Delaware. So it's like, literally, this guy has people who love him. We saw after the presidential debate, like, people were like, oh my God, gut wrench, heartbroken. They couldn't believe that Joe Biden was in such the condition that he was in. And you saw people, whether it was CNN, MSNBC, they were like, look, man, I was going to vote for Joe Biden regardless of what happened after the presidential debate. I was Joe all of the way, even after such a poor performance like that. So to Joe Biden's defense, he has the fan base he has because as long as he's been in government, he knows a lot of people. Like, he has a lot of connections. But with that being said, who said this? Bill O'Reilly said this in conversation with Stephen A. Smith. And Stephen A. Smith, mind you, who is also being looked at for the 2028 election as a Democratic nominee, said himself that he has went on the air, on the record, to say that yes, Joe Biden destroyed the Democratic Party. Am I saying I wholeheartedly agree with him? Not so much. I don't think it could just be one person. But Bill O'Reilly made a great point. He's like, nobody from the Democratic Party will say it. Not a mayor, not a governor, not a politician, not a senator, not a congressperson. So if nobody on that side could admit that, yeah, that last administration really fudged up some things on the left side for the Democrats, then it's like, dude, we got a problem, because this is why they keep leading with the same crazy predisposed rhetoric that they have. And now the freaking Democratic favorable percentage is at 31, and it's like unfavorable is almost 60%. That's I'm not gonna say it's unheard of for the Democratic Party, but it's definitely uncommon.
A report from CNN, only 31% of Americans right now have a favorable view of the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, 57% of Americans have an unfavorable view of the Democratic Party. Folks, that is one of the worst approval ratings for a major party in American history.
Facts.
Meanwhile, as I'm sure you all know, President Trump right now is sitting at his highest approval ratings of all time.
That's facts too. And this is not something that the Democrats can even be transparent enough to admit. The one thing that they won't admit is that President Trump is sitting at his highest approval rating especially since his last administration. They're all like, no, he's doing horrible. The American people are with the Democrats. No, Hakeem Jeffries, they're not. Yo, guys, say what's up in the chat. Say where you watching from. Hit that like button for me, guys. It only takes a second. It goes a far way. Hit that like button for me. We have to throw him in jail before he burns the world.
So let's be real here for a minute. America does not stand with the Democrats. If anything, America is actually rejecting the Democrats at record levels. But okay, let's tackle another one of Hakeem Jeffries' absurd claims. If you remember, Hakeem Jeffries said that President Trump is attacking the economy. No, actually, we all remember that it was Joe Biden who ruined the economy.
Okay, we heard it, right? Look at this. So let's look at some of these stats. U.S. economy is poor or not so good. 83% of Americans said yes to that. Don't feel able to change their standards of living for the better. 46% of Americans agree to that. Not satisfied with their financial situation. 35 Americans agree to that.
Under Joe Biden's administration, we got historic inflation, rising interest rates, skyrocketing grocery prices, and a cost of living crisis that has made it almost impossible for middle-class Americans to get by.
So I would say it's safe to say, like, under the Biden administration is probably where we saw some of the most destruction, at least within the last current years, right? Because, and my apologies for that, but not satisfied with their financial situation, 35% Americans said that. Okay, so 35% is the lowest number we have here. If we round up, this goes to 40%. If we round up, this goes to 50%. And this still stays at 83. Those are record numbers for when the Democrat is in office and people are that unhappy. Normally, you know what's funny, and this is how I know that the Democratic Kool-Aid is running out, because normally people will say that they're happy even when the current administration, even if it is a Democratic administration and it's doing not that terrible, right? I think our last administration was so terrible that people just couldn't lie. Like, they couldn't hide it anymore. The prices of groceries were crazy. The prices of gas got really, really ridiculous at one point. Everything is expensive. Rent is going crazy. Mortgage is doing this and that. So it's like when people say, like, no, you know, I don't think that, you know, the Biden administration did that bad. Remember, he inherited that. Okay, this is how I know people who aren't watching the economy. You can sit there and you can say whatever you want about the last administration. If you are watching the economy, there is no one who paid attention to the economy who under Trump's last administration said that Biden's economy was better. There's no one who has said that. And now when people say, well, you saw the numbers that they pulled up on MSNBC. Yeah, right. Like, we're going to believe MSNBC. Like, yeah, right. We're going to believe NBC News. We're not going to believe mainstream media. This is the reason why people like my channel and other bigger YouTubers that cover news and reactions to news and IRL and when politicians go on podcasts. This is why we exist, because we don't listen to mainstream media, because we know mainstream media lies a lot, right? It's lost the American public's trust. So at the end of the day, we go to shorter outlets, less well-known outlets that we know will do due diligence to find us the truth, right? Because they're not searching for viewership. This is the reason why I try to do my best to look at my chat, because so many people will be saying, hey Q, what's up? Hey, I'm always in your chat. Like, can you give me a shout out? And I want to give them a shout out, but more than I want to give them a shout out, I want to give you guys accurate news. This is why it's so important. Like, I spent so many years not watching the news that's why this type of reporting is so important to me, because a lot of people, and I've said it in prior lives, that look like me, whether they're minority, black or brown. Yes, also I have some white friends that just will not watch the news because they're like, I don't want to see nothing bad. The news is depressing. The news doesn't report anything good. But dude, we don't need to be ignorant voters. We don't need to be going to the polls ignorantly. And as long as we keep an eye on the news, at least we know what they're lying about, right? Like, this is okay, I do it often, but I'm going to go back to the military because you guys know my time in the Marine Corps. This is a very simple military tactic, right? Know your enemy. Like, this is a simple tactic. Know your enemy. If you don't watch the news, you can't even begin to think about what they could be lying about. I was so entrenched in the news for so many years because it was just something my mom would watch that there's no way at age 11, 12, or 13, someone could tell me mainstream media lied to the American people and I would have believed it. I would have been like, no, there's no way they do that. Of course there's a way that they do that.
Possible for middle-class Americans to get by. Meanwhile, President Trump right now is busy cleaning up the mess that Democrats like Joe Biden and Hakeem Jeffries have made. But as we all know, Hakeem Jeffries doesn't really care about that. All he wants to do is keep on spreading lies to make people think that Trump is a bad guy. And so then he goes on to say just completely incompetent things like President Trump is assaulting democracy. Which is so weird because last time I checked, it was actually the Democrats, people like Hakeem Jeffries, who have spent the last 4 years trying to subvert our democracy. In fact, as you all might remember, it was actually the Democrats who opened up our southern border and imported tens of millions of illegal immigrants into the country in an effort to replace American voters. It was the Democrats that tried to kick Trump off of the Republican primary ballot using Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which the Supreme Court had to come in and shut down in a sweeping 9-0 decision. And it was the Democrats that tried to weaponize the justice system to try to imprison Trump, their political opposition. And then after all of that, Hakeem Jeffries gets up here and talks to us about threats to democracy. Give me a break. But then he goes on to perpetuate this lie about President Trump attacking Medicare and Medicaid. And as you all know by now, this is just yet another blatant, obvious Democrat lie. In reality, nothing President Trump is doing threatens Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security, and in fact, President Trump has addressed this issue multiple times. And hey, if you guys think back a couple years, it was actually the Democrats that tried to gut Medicaid in order to fund Obamacare. So all of this is just peak hypocrisy. But folks, okay, what's the real takeaway here? Right now, the Democrats are wildly unpopular, and because of that, they're lashing out. Their protests are fake and paid for by taxpayer money, and now that their USAID slush fund has been cut off, their entire illusion of support has collapsed overnight. You can literally see all of this happening in real time. The Democrats' once massive anti-Trump protests have all but disappeared. And so now, Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries know all they can do is lie because they have no other options. But here's the reality. Despite all of the lies and all of the whining coming from the Democrats right now, Trump's Department of Government Efficiency has already been able to eliminate a staggering $105 billion in fraud, waste, and abuse from the federal budget. And as we all now know, a lot of that money was being siphoned off by various progressive political activist groups. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the entire progressive movement is a complete and total illusion. They're voters, illegal immigrants, their political activism funded by corruption. And now that Trump is back in office, their entire house of cards is collapsing before our very eyes.
And it's like, even if we don't want to give Doge any credit, we got to think about it. President Trump got in office January 20th, February 20th, March. Okay, so we're coming up on, depending on where you're counting from, almost 2 months, right? And we want to count this month. I mean, $105 billion in 2 months would make you think, like, where did they even come up? Yeah, it's $105 billion. Where did they even come up with that much money in less than 90 days? Well, that should go to show us that some of the stuff that they're cutting actually probably needs to be cut, right? Because when have we had a president come in and showed us that much savings in such a little bit of time? It hasn't even been 90 days yet. Guys, say what's up in the chat. Hit that like button for me, guys.
And I, for one, am absolutely here for it. This is one of the massive reasons why we all voted for President Trump, to put an end to the corrupt theatrics of the Democrats. And let's be very clear, President Trump is, in fact, putting an end to the corrupt theatrics of the Democrats. And so here's the truth. The reason why the Democrats, like Hakeem Jeffries, are melting down right now is because they know they're facing an existential crisis. They know their taxpayer-funded racket of maintaining this illusion of support is coming to an end. We all see right through the Democrats' smoke and mirrors now. In fact, President Trump has pretty much smashed the smoke machine and shattered all of the mirrors. And so now the entire country can really see the Democrats for what they truly are. Just a bunch of hypocritical, highly corrupt liars. But now, before we wrap up, I want to say real quick that I've actually gone ahead and made a community Facebook page where I'll be posting additional news and
So this is where I can appreciate Matt Moore's. This is you guys can follow him here, Matt Moore's News. I appreciate when he talks about the fact that Hakeem Jeffries, his attempt to tell the American people that, his attempt to tell basically the Republicans that the American people are standing with Democrats. It is divisive, but it's just his way of like just grasping for straws. Like they already understand that this stuff is falling apart. USAID is not being funded anymore, right? So as long as that's not there, a lot of the protests can't keep on coming because a lot of that stuff is funded through that stuff. So as Doge saves us and continues to save the country billions and billions, and hopefully they get to trillions of dollars, what's going to happen is we're going to see protesters, mainly protesters who are protesting the current administration, just disappear. Because a lot of that funding that would go there for them to be able to do that stuff, it's disappearing. So they're not going to have it there anymore. So this is the reason why we're seeing like the Democratic Party protesting go down some, because just the funding for them to be able to go out and protest, mind you, their own president just isn't there anymore, and it shouldn't be there anymore. It's one of the most frustrating things, I think, as a person who fought for the country. It's one thing when it's election time and we're all rooting for one side, but once one side wins, it's like that's it, the game's over, and the champion is the champion. The president is the president of the Democrats and the Republicans. So the more I see the Democrats act up, the more it drives me crazy, the more distasteful I actually think that they am. So without switching gears, staying on the Democratic side of things, Joe Rogan, one of my favorite podcasts, torched Gavin Newsom's cringe new podcast. Why did he do this? I don't know, but I'm happy that he did. Because out of all the Democrats to come out with the long-standing podcast, it had to be Gavin Newsom, and I was like, so this is the best that they got, huh? This was the breadwinner for them. I can't, there's so many, I've talked about him on the channel before, the amazing Lucas. He does great at, I think, covering liberal content, more left-leaning content. And Lucas actually talked about being a Republican at one point in time and leaning more conservative, but he changed over the years and now he leans more liberal and his content is more liberal-leaning. I've looked at some of his stuff. I reacted to some of his things. Like, I actually think I enjoy his content. He kind of reminds me, like, when he talked about being a Republican, but basically, like, going over to the Democrats, I looked at him like, wow, like, the Republicans lost this guy? Like, that's the way that I kind of looked at him. I think he does great. I think he's a good voice. But this is how you know that the Democrats are just struggling when it comes to a voice, because so many people are, like, looking for who's the next voice. And, who said this to President Trump? It wasn't Bill Maher. It was Bill O'Reilly said that President Trump has opened up, the lane for, people to come through, for candidates to be able to come through that are not so political and actually be considered for a high role in government. And I agree with Bill O'Reilly. I said, absolutely, I think President Trump did that, because before President Trump, most people wanted the person had to be a politician. Did they go to this school? Did they graduate from here? How many years have they been in the Senate? Have they ever served in Congress? And with President Trump coming in and not having any of that, not even a military background, I really did think he kind of set the tone for people to be able to run that aren't so political and have a good shot at actually winning the presidency. Hence the reason why we see Stephen A. Smith as even being considered for the 2028 presidential election. So I think it's pretty cool, and I agree with Bill O'Reilly when he says that Trump kind of opened that door up. So not switching gears, but staying with the Democrats, Joe Rogan is talking about Gavin Newsom's new podcast. The Democrats realized that when President Donald Trump went on Joe Rogan's podcast, one of, if not the biggest podcast in the world, it catapulted his campaign. And if you were paying attention, just like I know, that it did the same thing. Within just a couple of days, I would say 72 hours, he was at 14 million views. Well past that now. Within a week or two, he was at 42 million. I think JD is somewhere around 14 or 22 million now. But I mean, it did wonders for their campaign. And it seems like the Democrats caught on. So they caught on. They found out the secret. They found out that millennials and Gen Z, we absolutely love long long-standing podcast. We will listen to something for 1 to 3 hours, especially if the conversation is open, naked, transparent, honest, vulnerable. They have our attention, right? The Democrats have figured this out, and the person that they chose, drum roll please, was Gavin Newsom. I don't know how they landed with Gavin Newsom. This right here is interesting for me. I think they would have did better with somebody like a John Fetterman, because he's very blunt and straight to the point. He doesn't beat around the bush. I think sometimes Gavin Newsom tends to dance around a lot in conversations. I've seen him do it a lot, specifically with Bill Maher. So it's like, I don't know if I can't see myself listening to an hour of Gavin Newsom. It's hard for me to listen to like 5 or 10 minutes of Gavin Newsom. So I'm interested in seeing like what his podcast is going to sound like. But the Democrats have figured out how much Gen Z and millennials love podcasts. So the Democrats have rolled out Gavin Newsom's new podcast. Let's see what Matt Morse has to tell us about Gavin Newsom's new cringe podcast. It's not just a podcast. They're calling it a cringe podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Rogan just absolutely destroyed California Governor Gavin Newsom. You see, just the other day, Gavin Newsom announced his brand new podcast. I guess he realized that being a politician isn't working out so well for him, so now he's going to try to become a social media influencer. But you see, here's the problem for Newsom. As if people didn't hate him enough already, Gavin Newsom's podcast announcement has pretty much made him the laughingstock of the entire country. But before I show you guys Gavin Newsom's new incredibly cringe podcast trailer, take a look at what Joe Rogan had to say about Newsom just about 3 weeks ago.
Look at this little wiggle. It's excited about the possibilities of speculators coming in. These people lost their homes. A lot of those people don't even have fire insurance because the fire insurance pulled out of California. I think like 69% of fire insurance pulled out of California because they're like, this is too crazy.
Yeah, and it was like, honestly, I thought that was some of the craziest stuff. 69% of fire insurance companies pulled out of California. But I said, this makes sense, right? Because from them just not cleaning the brush, like not doing their due diligence, the fires are out of control. The insurance companies are like, dude, we're paying these payouts like definitely every fire season, but sometimes outside of that, just because you guys won't clean up your freaking brush, just because you won't clean up your surrounding areas. So you got 69% of the insurance places pulling out of California due to fires. And it's just like, dude, like the reservoir completely empty around fire season. Like, I don't know how Gavin Newsom's going to do on this podcast, but I'm very interested to see. Guys, say what's up in the chat. Hit that like button for me, guys. Tell me where you're watching from.
You guys aren't doing jack shit to manage this. You're not clearing the brush. The amount of money they could have saved by just clearing brush, by filling the reservoir, that 11 million gallon reservoir was completely empty during the time of full fire season. Like, why didn't you fix that?
Yeah.
Like, it's all insanely mismanaged. And then this guy is on television talking about that, doing a dance in front of the burned down home that people used to sleep in, where their children would sleep in. Like, this is so disgusting.
You know,
That's why I don't want to be governor. Their houses have been burned, all their childhood memorabilia, all the stuff for their kids, the photos, the fucking everything they have. Everything they have is gone. All heirlooms, you know, their mother's wedding ring, that kind of shit. Everything's burnt to the ground. And this guy's like standing in front of all this stuff, and he's got a smile on his face, and he's talking about land.
Did you know that AI is set to create
in defense of Gavin Newsom, I don't think so. Like, I know what Joe Rogan is saying, because really, it really speaks to how tone deaf Gavin Newsom is, right? Because I don't think he was standing there smiling because the fires had just happened and people don't have things, but it shows how tone deaf he is to a situation, right? Like, Joe Rogan's like, he's just standing there smiling and people's houses have just been burned down, and this guy's like, he's just standing there like, you know, doing a little bounce and dance. And I'm like, yeah, it speaks to how tone deaf Gavin Newsom can be to certain situations. I think sometimes he can be extremely tone deaf.
He's got a smile on his face, and he's talking about land use.
So folks, literally everything that Joe Rogan said about Gavin Newsom there was 100% true. It's very clear that Gavin Newsom isn't exactly interested in improving the lives of Californians. No, he seems more interested in abusing his position of power to make money for himself and all of his corrupt progressive friends. Because as you all know, every single year that California has been under his leadership, things have pretty much been going down the toilet. And so now, instead of fixing the homelessness crisis, the out-of-control crime, the mass exodus of businesses leaving the country, or the state's crumbling economy, Newsom has decided that now he'd rather spend his time working to become a social media influencer. And even worse yet, his new podcast is pretty much the cringiest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. But before I show you guys the little promotional trailer for it, I want to say real quick, if you guys enjoy the daily news coverage, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton with my daily struggle against the YouTube algorithm. But okay, everybody buckle up. Let's all take a look at Gavin Newsom's new podcast.
We need to change the conversation. And that's why I'm launching a new podcast. And this is going to be anything but the ordinary politician podcast. I'm going to be talking to people directly that I disagree with, as well as people I look up to. But more important than anything else, I'll be talking directly with you, the listener. Real conversations. What's going on with the cost of eggs? What are the impacts, real impacts to you around tariffs? What power does an executive order really have? And what's really going on inside of Doge? Look, there's an onslaught of information that we take in.
See, this is where I got cringed by the podcast that fast because I'm like, what's really going on inside of Doge? I'm like, come on, Gavin Newsom. If you're creating a podcast for the Democrats to actually be able to interact with the people, why are you guys talking about Doge? How about what's really going on inside of the Democratic Party? How about what really went on inside of the Biden administration? But here he wants to come on talking about Doge. That's all I'm like, here we go already.
So let's take it to the sources without the typical political mumbo jumbo. In the first few weeks, we're going to be sitting down with some of the biggest leaders and architects in the MAGA movement. This is Gavin Newsom.
This is Gavin Newsom, and that, like I said, is probably the cringiest thing I have ever seen. So folks, let's go ahead and ask the obvious question. Why is the governor of California starting his own podcast? Is it because he's trying to fix California? No. Is it because he's trying to help Californians? Nope. Is it because he wants to be the president in 2028? Absolutely. You already know that this podcast isn't about policy or solutions. It's about Newsom building his national brand ahead of the next presidential election. He saw the impact that social media had on the recent 2024 election, and guess what? He wants a piece of the pie. He genuinely thinks that the best way to build support nationwide is to become a podcaster, and that's why he's doing it. However, the problem with Gavin Newsom's plan is that all of the top podcasters are actually likable people, whereas he's just completely fake and insufferable. But you know what? Speaking of likable podcasters, this is where Joe Rogan's response comes in. You see, upon seeing Newsom's podcast announcement, Joe Rogan posted, "If the ick was a podcast."
This is Joe Rogan's X post. If the ick was a podcast, and then he has like Gavin Newsom's post down there about his podcast.
And folks, that is probably the understatement of the century, if you ask me. But now, check this out. One of the ongoing narratives amongst the left is that they need a stronger social media influence right now to attract younger voters, something to compete with all of the conservative podcasters and YouTubers. And so this is where things get funny, because Joe Rogan also retweeted a post saying this.
So the left needs their own JRE, Joe Rogan Experience. The left, best we can do is ... And then it has this post down here with Gavin Newsom's photo. It says problem. The left needs their own Joe Rogan. We need to show we understand issues most Americans face daily. We're regular, hardworking folks, just like you. I don't think that that's true, Democrats.
Left needs their own Joe Rogan. We need to show that we understand the issues that most Americans face on a daily basis. We're regular, hardworking folks, just like you. Then Joe Rogan made fun of the fact that the best the left can come up with is Gavin Newsom. So here's the reality, folks. I think we all know that this is true. The Democrats just come off as being completely fake and totally insincere. And as we're all seeing with all of this, even when they're trying to work on their public image, they still pick the fakest person on the planet to represent them, Gavin Newsom.
Yep.
And let's be honest, Americans can tell people are sick of the insincerity from the left. In fact, none other than famous boxer Floyd Mayweather came out just the other day and said pretty much exactly that.
At least I'm happy, but we're never happy when we had
We had Trump before. We didn't appreciate him, but I think Trump is a great president. Actually, he's the best president in my eyes. He's the best president we ever had. Great businessman, and that's what it's about.
Yeah, and the way the days cabinet thing, you probably went around here. It was really phenomenal. To the point you talked about team, putting together a great team.
Yes,
put together a fantastic cabinet.
Trump has done an amazing job, and a lot of people around America are upset. But no matter who goes in the White House, we're always upset.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And I think Trump is the man for the job. He's the best president in my eyes.
I mean, Floyd Mayweather makes a good point. I agree with him because it wouldn't matter if Trump was in office right now, which he is, or Kamala Harris. People would be upset either way. So Floyd Mayweather makes a great point when he's like, we're always upset regardless of who wins the presidency. But in his opinion, he feels like Trump is a good president.
You hear that? Trump is the best president. And hey, do you guys agree? I sure do. Once again, while Gavin Newsom is out here ignoring California's ongoing homelessness crisis, out-of-control crime, mass exodus of businesses fleeing the state, and the state's crumbling economy in order to become a social media influencer, common sense conservatives are out here providing results. In other words, making America great again. So folks, here's the real takeaway. With the Democrats, it's always too little, too late, and as clearly displayed by Gavin Newsom's podcast, their priorities are always completely out of whack. Not only do they not know how to run a country, but also, guess what? They have no idea how to appeal to voters. And until they can fix those two problems, let's just say that they won't be winning any elections.
Nope.
Because I can promise you this, there's not a single person in this country that looks at the way that California has been run and operated for the last 10 years and says, man, I wish my state was run like that.
Nope.
Not a single person.
And with that being said, that's why I'm wondering what the 2028 election looks like for him. He's definitely one of the people who they think will be in the primaries. Like I said, I did this panel on a live probably about a week and a half ago now. But the names I remember, I saw Gavin Newsom, I saw Pete Buttigieg, I saw AOC, I saw Stephen A. Smith, and there's probably one other person I'm forgetting, but Gavin Newsom is definitely on there, you know, and he's doing what he needs to do to put himself in the forefront now. That's why I said he's figured out that podcasting platform was powerful for President Trump advance, and he's following it now.
But folks, I think that's going to be a wrap for this video, so please go down below in the comments, let me know what you think about all of this. Please like the video. Like the video if you liked it. Like I said earlier, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really does help a ton. Thank you all very much for tuning in today. And of course, as always, stay safe.
Shout out to you, Matt. I think that Matt had a great take on it. I appreciate his take on that because I honestly, without watching his video, and I didn't there were a couple people that did a video on that. You can put two and two together because if you paid attention to the way that Trump campaigned, right? He listened to a lot of different things he did in his first time. His youngest son was one of the people who actually told him, hey, going on Joe Rogan would actually be a good thing for you to do. So he listened to Byron on that, right? J.D. Vance went shortly after Trump, and guess what? Both of their episodes pretty much went viral. Joe Rogan tried to get Kamala Harris to come on the podcast, and she didn't want to. And then even when they talked about her possibly going on there, she didn't want to stay on there. She said, I can't do no more than an hour. Well, if you watch Joe Rogan's platform, you know he can have people on there 2.5, 3 hours, right? Hey, I look at it like this way. If you're an honest politician and you don't have anything to hide, why can't you sit there with someone for 3 to 4 hours and just have a conversation, right? Unless you do have something to hide. So that was a hard thing for her to do, and that's why she ended up not going on the Joe Rogan podcast. And I thought that was actually something that was detrimental to her campaign. Am I saying if she would have went on, I think she would have won? Not exactly. But I think she would have did better than what she did because literally everyone pays attention to that podcast, especially men. And Kamala suffered the most with male voters. So the fact that she totally dodged Joe Rogan's podcast, I don't think that worked in the Democrats' favor. And that, hence, is the reason why I think Gavin Newsom is coming out with the podcast, because now, when there is a new Democratic nominee running for president, they don't have to run over to Joe Rogan's podcast if Gavin Newsom can get his numbers where they need to be, right? I don't think that they will be, but nonetheless, the Democratic Party has had fans and people who have endeared it for many years. So I don't think that they'll be destitute either. Okay, guys, so moving to our second to last clip, final one, right? Tariffs. We know today tariffs went out to Canada, and because of that, Canada made an announcement. Justin Trudeau made an announcement saying that President Trump basically has started a trade war because of his tariffs, and that he's initiated a trade war. One of his closest friends, which is Canada, Justin Trudeau, went on the record to say that he doesn't usually agree with the Wall Street Journal, but even the Wall Street Journal said that even though President Trump is a smart man, this is a dumb move, and Trudeau co-signed that. Here's where Justin Trudeau gets my respect. He's standing up for his country. You know, he's doing what he thinks is best. He's doing what he thinks is best. I'm not going to come on and be like, oh, Justin, you're so stupid because da-da-da. He has to do something, right, as a person that represents a country. So he's doing what he thinks is best. I hate to see this, right? I love our Canadian friends, right? Canada is probably the country that watches my channel second most to America. So I actually love my Canadian subscribers and my Canadian friends. I have Canadian friends. I have Canadian family members, viewers on YouTube. So I actually have a lot of respect for what Justin Trudeau did. I love that he stood up for Canada. If I'm honest with you, this is going to sound low-key crazy, but the retaliatory tariffs, I was like, good for you. You know what I'm saying? See, here's the thing. The Americans that voted President Trump in office, like, nobody's shocked at what he's doing. If you're a person that voted for Donald Trump, you're like, okay, I understand that he's doing this. Oh, that kind of sucks. Ooh, that takes a hit right there. Don't really like that. But overall, he's doing what he said he would do, right? Right. This is why we put people in office, right? So we know that President Trump is here to get the United States out of massive debt that it literally cannot keep handling, to the point where if it does not get rid of it, the country will go bankrupt, right? So everyone who voted for President Trump, we are saying, hey, he's doing what the American people asked, right? Justin Trudeau, as the leader of Canada, has to do the same. So he's like, hey, if you're going to do this to us, we've always been a long-standing friend. We want to be a partner. We've always been in support. We are going to release retaliatory tariffs to the United States. Can't really get mad at him, right? You can't. He's a leader of a country. He has to defend his people. He has to defend his country. He has to stand up for himself. And we got to respect him for that. So this is the second to last before we jump into the next live stream. I'll actually cut this one off for a couple of minutes and then restart the next one. So let's go ahead and check this video out. Quick 4-minute clip. I'm going to read some and then we'll hear Justin Trudeau talk. Hold on, chat. Let me see what's up with my audio real quick. I didn't think I even paused it that long, but I could have. Alright, chat. Hold on a minute. Give me a second. Maybe I unplugged it with my foot. I could have done that. Alright, let me read some of this to you guys, because the first minute they're not talking, they're just kind of doing a slideshow, so I'm gonna read it. Trump fires back, threatens higher tariffs on Canada. Trump is threatening higher tariffs because once the tariffs that the United States was going to originally put on Canada were released, that's when Justin Trudeau came back with the retaliatory tariffs. And then after he came back with his retaliatory tariffs, Trump is basically saying that there will be like an immediate increase on retaliatory tariffs. So I'm like, oh boy, how far is this going to go? How far is this going to go? Donald Trump says, please explain to Governor Trudeau of Canada that when he puts on a retaliatory tariff on the United States, our reciprocal tariff will immediately increase by a like amount. Oh boy. Trump retaliates against Trudeau. This is interesting because if Trump is saying when he puts on a retaliatory tariff on the U.S., our reciprocal tariff will immediately increase by a like amount. That's crazy. I'm going to say that's not going to happen, right? Because that could be 40 to 50% tariffs on Canada? No, there's no way. Trump, tariffs will rise as Canada hits back. Trump has threatened to increase tariffs further on Canada after Justin Trudeau imposed tariffs on the U.S. Trump has warned Trudeau on Truth Social about immediate reciprocal tariff hikes. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced 25% retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods. This is why I say that that's crazy, and hopefully they work something out, because if Trump is saying that just by him putting that retaliatory tariff of 25% on us, then our reciprocal tariff increases by the like amount. That's why I'm like, dude, that's like 50, 40. I mean, I'm saying 40 to be gracious, but that really would be like 45 to 50% tariffs on Canada, which is wild. So I don't think that's going to happen. Trudeau condemned Trump's trade war, calling it dumb and economically harmful. Trudeau accused Trump of attempting to collapse Canada's economy for U.S. annexation. So this is funny because we know that Russia did that to Ukraine, right? Basically what an annexation would be is it's like when a country takes another part of a country, maybe a small part of it or a small part of territory, and it makes it its own, right? So we know that Russia has done that in Ukraine. There are I think Russia occupies 1/5 of Ukrainian territory, right? So we know that Russia, the last time Russia did any type of annexation on Ukraine, I think it was in 2021. So that's what Justin Trudeau is now accusing Donald Trump for by putting the tariffs on Canada. Trudeau criticized the U.S. for targeting allies while appeasing Russia over Ukraine. Okay. Criticize the U.S. for targeting allies. Okay, so we know where that could be coming from. That could be coming from possibly that Prime Minister Trudeau does not understand our president's negotiation strategy. So based on what he sees, he thinks that President Trump is now in favor of Russia or Vladimir Putin, and he's stepping on who he believes to be the little guy, which would be Ukraine and Volodymyr Zelensky.
The United States launched a trade war against Canada. Their closest partner and ally, their closest friend. At the same time, they're talking about working positively with Russia, appeasing Vladimir Putin, a lying, murderous dictator. Make that make sense.
And I knew you would go this route. And honestly, Prime Minister Trudeau, the only way we can't make it make sense to you because you're not an American, so you're not going to understand the way our president operates. And President Trump is a negotiator, and he's not saying that he's on Goliath's team and he's trying to squish David, Prime Minister Trudeau. That's just not what's happening. But we just know that Putin's not going to just stop Prime Minister Trudeau. I think you know that too. So Trump has to come at it in a different way, and everyone's not going to understand it. I hate what's happening between us and Canada. I wish it was not happening. I love my Canada subscribers, my friends, my families, my viewers. But our president is trying to get us out of a massive debt. It's not optional, as Elon said. It is critical that this happens, or else the U.S. will go bankrupt. So we know that President Trudeau, amongst other countries, is not understanding what President Trump is doing. Many people feel like right now he is taking side with the invader instead of the invaded, but that's actually not the case. He's trying to work something behind the scenes. I've talked about it on here. Bill O'Reilly has talked about it. Everyone doesn't see it, but there's a method to President Trump's madness.
Canadians are reasonable and we are polite, but we will not back down from a fight. Not when our country and the well-being of everyone in it is at stake. I want to speak first directly to the American people. We don't want this. We want to work with you as a friend and ally. And we don't want to see you hurt either. But your government has chosen to do this to you. As of this morning, markets are down, and inflation is set to rise dramatically all across your country. Your government has chosen to put American jobs at risk, at the thousands of workplaces that succeed because of materials from Canada or because of consumers in Canada, or both. There is absolutely no justification or need whatsoever for these tariffs today. Now, the legal pretext your government is using to bring in these tariffs is that Canada is apparently unwilling to help in the fight against illegal fentanyl. Well, that is totally false. Now,
that can't be the only reason. That can't be the only reason. And we know that that's not the only reason, but this is what Justin Trudeau is telling us.
I want to speak directly to one specific American, Donald. In the over 8 years you and I have worked together, we've done big things. We signed a historic deal that has created record jobs and growth in both of our countries. We've done big things together on the world stage, as Canada and the US have done together for decades, for generations. And now we should be working together to ensure even greater prosperity for North Americans in a very uncertain and challenging world. Now, it's not in my habit to agree with the Wall Street Journal, but Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do. We two friends fighting is exactly what our opponents around the world want to see.
I mean, you know, and Trudeau's defense, I can't say here's where he might be speaking some truth. Anybody that is against the United States, they probably are not sad to see that Canada is not the happiest with us right now. There are a lot of Americans who aren't happy about it. I'm not happy about it. A lot of Americans that say, hey, we support our Canadian friends like we love our Canadian friends, and I stand by that. That's why I said, you know, kudos to Justin Trudeau for standing up for what he believes in and doing what he feels like he needs to do for his country. All you can do is respect the man as a leader. You know, like over here in America, we understand why President Trump is doing what he's doing. At least the people that voted for him did. At least the people that wanted a change in the United States because of the last administration, they understand what he's doing. But again, that doesn't mean that we want to see relationships severed, especially with a country like Canada, right? Like we've always loved Canada. So I hate that it's happening like this. Like, so some of it, I don't agree with Justin Trudeau. I don't believe he has to necessarily put on retaliatory tariffs and things like that. If he understands the position that the country is in, and he understands where Elon is coming from with Doge and what he's trying to do, I really think the retaliatory tariffs are unnecessary. But I understand why they would be there. As a leader, you still have to show your people, hey, I'm not willing to just roll over and let someone just do whatever to us. So that's why I said kudos to Justin Trudeau for that. Nobody can get mad at him for that. The man's leading a country. He's leading one of the greatest countries. I love Canada. So, you know, like, shout out to Canada. I wish them all the support in the world. I hope things turn around quick. Maybe Trump will lower their tariffs or take them away. You know, I'm not saying this is actually something I agree with. It's just something that I'm covering, right? All right, guys. So here we are. Last clip in the live, and we are going to end with a clip from Cliff, our trusted friend Cliff Buell. I always end the live stream with a Christian clip from our friend Cliff. And after this live stream, I'm going to end it for a couple minutes and go over to Trump addressing Congress, because I want to cover some of that here on the channel. So we're going to play this live, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what happens. The title here is Muslim Asks Tricky Question to a Christian. So there's a Muslim who asks a Christian a tricky question, I guess trying to trick him up, and the Christian actually prevails. So praise God. Let's take a look.
A smart Muslim tries to trick this Christian, but watch.
Sam, the Christian believed that Jesus, peace be upon him, died for 3 days, and then he was raised again. My question is, if Jesus is God, then who ran or operated the world when he was dead for 3 days?
First of all, the questioner is committing what we call the fallacy of false dilemma. Christians do not believe Jesus is the only person who is God. The question assumes that if Jesus died, God died, but actually we believe in a triune God. That's first. So even if we were to say that Christ ceased to exist for 3 days, the Father and the Holy Spirit were still existing. Secondly, Christ did not experience death in the sense of the questioner's statement. The questioner is assuming that death means non-existence. Christ never ceased to exist for those 3 days. What happened was his body went into the tomb, but his divine nature and human soul were still alive. How do we know this? John chapter 2 verse 19 down says, destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up. How can someone who's in non-existence raise himself up? So he did not die in that sense.
A smart Muslim tries to trick.
I like his fight because he says, when he used the verse in John, he says, Jesus says, destroy this temple and I will raise it up in 3 days. And the Christian says, how can you raise something up if you don't exist, if you're already dead? Right? So I love it because the Muslim asks, and it's a great question. I've had this question asked to me on panels in youth groups. Like, people want to know this. They say, like, you know, Christians believe that Jesus died for 3 days and then he was raised from the grave. So if Jesus was dead for 3 days, and since Christians believe Jesus is God, who ran the world for 3 days? I think that's such a cute question. Like, it's such a cute question because it's like they really thought that they was gonna trip him up, like just by asking, like, well, if Jesus was dead for 3 days, who was running the world? And I like his answer because he leads with, well, Christians believe in a triune God. So even if, let's say, Jesus did cease to exist for 3 days, the Father and the Holy Spirit would still be there. And even then, Jesus didn't die in the sense of dying to non-existent, to where he didn't exist, right? His human body went into a tomb, right? His divinity and his soul was still alive. And this is why in John, when Jesus says, destroy this temple and I will raise it in 3 days, the Christian says, well, how can somebody raise something if they've died to the point of non-existence? If they're not here, that's why I said if they're dead, right? They wouldn't be able to raise something. So I think it was actually a great answer. I think sometimes, and I see a lot of Christians get tripped up by this, usually newer Christians, that maybe they're just now starting, like, to evangelize or go out and be out and talk to people, and like there's these people that just want to ask them like the trickiest question their brain could think of. And I've told people often, like, you know, sometimes simplicity is key. A lot of times in scripture, Jesus doesn't even answer people. Like, he doesn't ignore everybody, but there are some times in scripture where people purposely try to get an answer from Jesus, and he just doesn't answer the question. And scripture says it's because he knew their hearts. He either knew that they were trying to trip him up, he knew that they were testing him, he knew that they were trying to ask some type of question that might start a full-on riot. So I think there's actually wisdom in sometimes not answering. And yeah, as the years going on in my relationship with Christ, like, God has taught that to me. So I pass that on to younger people who are going out and starting to evangelize and or talk to people or do any type of apologetics. Like, hey, simplicity is key sometimes. Like, we're not theologians, you know. We're preaching the good news. That's what the gospel is. So go out and preach the good news. But for the people who want to come up with these super, what they think are theological questions, and usually they have no idea what they're talking about, it's usually simplicity is key, or they don't need an answer, because this is the reason why Jesus didn't answer everyone's question. I didn't always feel comfortable not answering questions until I saw Jesus do it. And then I thought, and I realized, and I got the revelation that there's actually wisdom in not trying to always answer someone's question. Sometimes you don't know, sometimes you haven't studied enough, sometimes you want to sit with it longer, and I think that's okay. So guys, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and end this live because I'm going to jump over to the congressional speech. I had fun today, guys. Missed you guys yesterday, so that's why I'm doing 2 live streams today. I want to see if I can go find it right now on YouTube, and then I'm going to come back on live so you guys can watch it with me. Until then, guys, we will be back tomorrow, March 5th. I can't believe it's already March, man. The year is flying. March 5th, live and back at it again. We'll be live tomorrow around 2:15. Possibly a little bit earlier than that, but I'm looking forward to 2:15. And until next time, guys, like, be easy. What do I always say? Take care of yourselves, love one another, and be peaceful. Till next time, guys. See you tomorrow. Peace.